Article 1 of the Indian Constitution proudly proclaims that India, that is Bharat, shall be a union of states. However, this union of states lacks a national language, or what the famous lexicographer Noah Webster calls a band of national union. This brings me to my first point. A national language brings forth a sense of union and shared identity, which is of paramount importance in a country like India with 1.35 billion different people. Secondly, a national language can promote belongingness and a sense of comfort. It is a very common sight to see two Malayalis in a foreign land bond with each other instantly with a simple phrase, naatil evideya. However, this same sense of belongingness may not be seen between, say, a Marathi and a Malayali. This could be bridged if all citizens of India knew and promoted a single common national language. Thirdly, in the ever so advanced 21st century, with urbanization and competitiveness increasing day by day, a national language could greatly facilitate interstate migration
And
for
your
work.
time up, Zino. Anshika, your 1 minute and your time starts now.
A Bengali poet Tagore who came up with the composition of our national anthem in Hindi, our national motto Satyameva Jayate in Sanskrit, and are also the flag which actually came from the Telugu hands of Pingali Veyyada, or he came from the Telugu land. And then last not least, but the note with 17 different languages inscribed on it. And I must say that we are a country brimming with ethnicity and diversity, and we do not need one national language to project our unity or identity towards the world out there. And I would say that we are simply focusing upon a national language as a monoglot policy, and one that can actually destabilize the country, deframe our structure of constitution, and also deframe and de-ally the nature that we have been following for years now. And I would say, in the words of Sproul, that we are a country that has pluralism in its culture, and one thing that cannot be tolerated at any cost is the act and the claim of exclusiveness, which is exactly what is being asked here. And I would say this exclusiveness...
Thank you. Your time up. Now we have 5 minutes, guys, and your time starts now.
Now, before going into my arguments itself, let me clarify that I completely appreciate the multilingual heritage of India that we have. All that I am proposing is a national language that goes alongside all the different beautiful languages that India has. Now, getting to my first argument, having a national language can greatly improve the tourism and hospitality industry in India. Tourists, both domestic and foreigners, can travel the length and breadth of this beautiful country without missing out the God's own country or being regretful that kach nahi dekha to kuch nahi dekha.
Out to you, Anshika.
I would like to say that my worthy opponent stated about how diversity can be actually achieved by having a national language, whereas we see that the national language has been already a kind of oppression on the languages that exist in our country already. We have 22 languages, and yet they are not brought forth to the entire development of the country. And I would say that the Reorganization Act, which was brought forth in 1956, which actually has a kind of something to do with federalism, because our constitution supports federalism, and we see a centralism that is taking place with exactly
Out to
National
you.
Language Police
Thank you.
Act.
Again, I do not go against the idea of federalism. Each individual states can have the liberty to have their own official language for their official conduct. All I'm proposing is a national language that can facilitate all the different arenas that I mentioned. Now, getting to my second point, having a national language can open up access to literature, art, music, and movies. People can view all of these artistic works by translating it into a single language. It can help collaboration between wonderful artists bring the best of products.
Just to point one thing out, maybe the point is not that you are actually promoting one language, but you're oppressing the other languages. For example, the tribal languages which exist in our country are already being wiped out. Almost 400 languages within the next 60 years will be completely wiped out, and yet you're suggesting the implementation of a national language, which was one. Again, here the three language policy, which was brought by Gandhi, again has a substantial criteria where the only one language is combination, one is global language, and yet the classical language is not even mentioned about it. And yet the national language is placing superior order.
Over to you. Done. Thank you.
Oppression of the minority languages and promotion of a national language are two different debates in altogether. For example, what happened in Sri Lanka is oppression of a minority language. They burnt the Jaffna library, and that is what triggered the violence. And take the example of Indonesia on the other hand. A language that was spoken by less than 5% of the population was adopted. The Bahasa Indonesian language was adopted as a national language, and people could appreciate the cultural ties between the people by having a national language.
Out to you.
My worthy opponent should understand that when you speak about the ties and how these oppressions were faced by one single language, you should also take into consideration about the Ahom revolt, the Hundala revolt, the Santali revolt, which always have played a role in our country. And I must say that we are talking about diversity here as well. So when you're talking about diversity, and we can say that there has been a lot of, like for example, the Tamil people who have walked in the Konark temple, the two Karnataka girls who have been married to the...
Off to you, Anshika, kindly nutshell your points, please. Off to you, please.
To ensure that diversity does exist, that is why we have the 8th schedule under the Indian Constitution with different languages which are recognized as scheduled languages. Moreover, the government can always take more and more initiatives and policies to promote these minority languages, to promote them.
You're
Clear.
speaking about one national language here, and exactly the point is which language should be implemented, because in this case, we can also say that you're talking about maybe one language that can only be a part of 43% of the entire population, or something that can actually come from the globalization world, but we are talking about the existence of the languages we have already in our country, and I must say that we're going for pluralism.
Out to you.
Now, I think this is the elephant in the room, right? Which language to be adopted as a national language? This has been the contention from the beginning. Now, of course, 43% Hindi is not an ideal language, sure. Not even English, sure. But what did Mahatma Gandhi say when he was proposing an idea of a national language? He came up with something called Hindustani, which was a mixture of Hindi and Urdu, which also integrates culture, Islam and Hinduism.
Please.
Then I
Similarly,
would say
something
that
could
if
be
Thank
you're
you.
brought
talking about Gandhi, the person who also followed his path was just Nehru, came in the Constituent Assembly debates that 22 languages which are given official status should be actually national languages of a country, which is actually the multilingual policy which we have to adapt for the nation, and which is not exactly what is being done. And I would also say that...
Thank you. Yes, please.
As far as I understand, Mahatma Gandhi never argued that 22 languages should be made the national language of India itself, if that's what I got. I'm really sorry if that's
Come with the next
it was
point,
a
please.
misinterpretation.
Yes.
Keeping that aside, even another point that I would like to raise is that if we do have a national language, that to a country with 1.35 billion people, companies, corporates would flock to develop products for India. For example, if anybody has an iOS phone right here, check the Translate app. There is not even a single Indian language in that. So if we do promote
point
a
is
single
clear.
language,
Yes.
Dear friend, you should also know about the fact that came up by Sandra Hallock in the came of WEF report, which is submitted according to the economic policy, to say that almost 10% of the GDP increased when there was a multilingual policy made in a country, not where the national language actually existed, overpowering the other languages in the country. So I would say that such kind of economic trade can only be achieved. And you're also talking
Thank you so much. Time up. Now it's the time for judges.
You cited the Indonesian example here. Will you support Sanskrit as India's national language?
as I mentioned, more than Sanskrit, the language that I would go for if I was a parliamentarian and I was to bring the bill would be a mixture of Hindustani, which was proposed by Mahatma Gandhi, along with elements of Dravidian languages as well. I would institute a committee that is specifically for this. I would give them 5 years to study on how to create Hindustani that is accommodative of the Dravidian languages as well. Sanskrit is a forgotten language to a large extent. Reviving it would be a greater task at large.
Now, your opponent was saying a national language can coexist with the other official languages. Okay, but you were stressing the fact that a national language will oppress the other languages. How will this happen?
So let me remind one important fact we actually forgot over here. That is, when we coexist, we should also check in the era that we live today. Here, if we are talking about national language being implemented, soon we'll reach a situation where national religion will be implemented, because I say that language and single language will always overpower the political power of the party that actually rules the country, and somehow will lead to the depression of what we do not want to see in this world today. So I say, if he says that there is coexistence between the both, we will not see it for long term.
Thank you
anyhow.
so much, Anshika. Your time up. A good and applause from both of them. Kindly come forward. Anshika, please, to the center stage, please. Shake your hands. Thank you so much, contestants.